All right, we're back. All right, and we have Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. That's why I have this shirt on today. It's leg day. And if you like this shirt, you're going to love tomorrow's outfit, which I'm sure we'll get on social media somehow.
Ooh.
But yeah, something to look forward to, which I guess by the time everyone sees this, it will have already passed. So,
Yeah. Be on the lookout.
so we have one scenario today that we'll discuss, and it's a lengthy topic, so we'll probably just stick to this one. But it's definitely something that's happened before with clients who have started a nutrition program, that they've changed their lifestyle, they've made an adjustment, and then they have potentially gained weight in the short term. And I know this has happened to me before, specifically in high school. I wanted to lose a couple extra pounds before going to college for football. And I was given a program, an eating program, nutrition program. And at first it felt like I was eating so much food, and it didn't seem like my calories were too high. But I gained a couple of pounds. Now, I guess Lauren will go over the reasons as to why that potentially happened. But essentially what the client would verbalize to us is, hey, we just started focusing on what we're eating. We just made adjustments to my nutrition program, to my lifestyle. So I've gained a few pounds. Why is this happening?
So full disclaimer, when you sent me this topic, my first reaction was, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Like, this is a really negative thing, and it's obviously affecting a service that I'm trying to sell people. But 3 seconds later, I was like, no, actually, this is really important because this happens often. I think there's a couple reasons that we'll go into here, and you can let me know your feedback, because obviously I get the people that specifically talk about nutrition. You're training with people for over an hour a couple times a week, so you hear about some of the struggles that maybe I don't even hear about as their coach. So I think the first thing that we should talk about are maybe what the focus is for each individual person, right? Because there are ways to make positive changes for people's diets that are individual, right? So I have some people that track calories and macronutrients, and I think that this can be a really educational tool, but there is a really large margin of error when it comes to tracking, right? I think we talked about this last week where or maybe 2 weeks ago, where a couple studies have shown that people drastically underreport their calorie intake. One study showed that the average was like 47%, which equated to, I want to say, about 600 calories, if I remember off the top of my head. And I think it's important to understand that it's impossible to be completely accurate with tracking your calories, and especially if you're not doing something like weighing your food. And to be honest, I know people that would rather shit in their hands and clap than track their calories and weigh their food. So that's not an option for everybody, especially because there's such a big margin of error there, right? So even in a study that I saw between, like, there was like a head-to-head comparison of like it was 10 women, regular women, versus 10 registered dietitians that were also women that were asked to report their food for a week. Kind of self-report. And even the registered dietitians who do this professionally underreported an average of 223 calories a day. So it's not perfect. It's really easy to mess that up. I mean, even food labels can be up to 20% off on what they have on their labels. And then you're throwing in things like net carbs, which is kind of the buzzword, and that's reducing the calories in certain packaged foods. And I think it's easy to overeat when you're trying to track your calories, when you're what's the word I'm thinking of? I guess when you're not mastering the basics first, right? So there's a lot of room for error there. We'll stop there. But something else to consider when you're trying to focus on fat loss is you're not taking into consideration often, because we're bad at being mindful, I think, in general. Not that there's anything that we're doing that's we're not doing it intentionally, like we're just bad at it as human beings. But you're not tracking the bites, the licks, the tastes, the sips, of the little things throughout the day, which will add up, especially if you're a parent. Like, you're not thinking about tracking or being mindful of the handful of goldfish you had, or the rest of the juice box that you drank, or half the peanut butter sandwich that you had. You're not thinking about that. So when you're thinking about everything that I ate and, oh, I'm eating so much less, like, you might not be focused on those, and those can add up to a couple hundred extra calories a day, whether you realize it or not. Did you have anything you wanted to
Yeah,
touch
well,
on?
I think that's the exact situation that comes up, and that's probably the first thing that I try to make clients aware of when they bring this to my attention while we're training. Like, I gained a few pounds, and this is what I ate, and then just, in my mind trying to calculate the calories, like, oh, well, that's not a lot of calories, so you gaining weight and eating an average of those amount of calories daily is probably unlikely. So then you dig a little bit deeper. You say, oh, well, between these two meals, did you have anything? Like, no, just I had a Gatorade. It's like, all right, well, those are a few hundred. That's 120 calories, I believe, for a 16-ounce bottle or so.
Oh, a big one I hear often is, oh, I just had tea or coffee. And that's what they'll say. And then with deeper digging, they put milk in their coffee,
sugar,
and then sugar,
creamer,
those flavored creamers, or they have like a little pastry with their afternoon tea or coffee. So there's a lot of no, I'm really not eating a lot at all, but like you are. If you're not losing weight, you are by definition not in a calorie deficit. Like, you're not doing it. And I think here's kind of the caveat there is, we have people, and this is super common, whether you're being mindful or not, that you're really good, Monday through Friday, right? You're in your deficit. If you're someone that tracks calories, you're hitting your targets really well. And then the weekends come and you have a cheat meal, or you go off the rails. And just those couple of cheat meals, or the 2 bad days on the weekend, can be enough to blow that weekly deficit, and you will not lose weight. So even though you're really good for 5 days and you are on track, 2 days of overeating can totally ruin any progress that you're making when it comes to fat loss.
Yeah, I've experienced that, where at one point in time I was having a cheat meal on a Sunday night. It's a pretty common thing. But and so the first couple of weeks I ate very good. And essentially, to offset that cheat meal, you have to eat very, very good for the other 6.75 days of the week. And then you'd have this one big cheat meal, and that worked for a couple of weeks. But then I started noticing that I wasn't very, very good anymore for those other non-cheat meal meals. And then things started accumulating here and there, and then I was having this cheat meal still on Sunday, which stayed the same in terms of calorie amount. And then next thing you know, like, I've actually gained weight in this scenario, which I'm trying to lose. But how could this happen? I'm eating so good, and I'm like, wait a second, I'm actually not eating very good on Monday through Sunday afternoon anymore. Right. And it's still pretty good if I continue that behavior minus the cheat meal, but that cheat meal would put me in a weekly caloric surplus.
Sure,
which is what created that. But it's little things like that you have to be aware of, and you have to be honest with yourself. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
It's like any time that I've tried something in terms of trying to improve body composition and drop body fat, if I look back and say, oh, you know what? Remember, I had that Reese's that was downstairs for the Halloween collection, and then you know what? And then I had like half of that protein bar, which isn't necessarily a bad food choice, but it's another 150 calories that I wouldn't have taken into consideration in my total daily count.
Sure. At
the end of the day, and then you have Gatorade, you have something like that. You put milk in your coffee. Next thing you know, you're like, wow, 300 calories just like that I wouldn't have told someone that I ate if they had asked me. And I think that's kind of the missing link on counting calories.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too. If you're someone who likes to go out to eat at restaurants, like, that's impossible to track. 100% impossible. So that's when you need to really be honest with yourself and what your goals are. And you can definitely make progress, but you need to be realistic. And if you still want to go out to eat a couple nights a week, just know that you're going to have a harder time potentially losing weight, right? Losing body fat. I think that's something else that's important to touch on is people are typically measuring, weight loss just by using the scale. And as we know, like, the scale can fluctuate so much. I mean, literally, I track my weight every day because I'm a data nerd and I like to see what the changes are, and I'm a little crazy. But like, I will literally be 2.5 pounds different from one day to the next because of food volume, a higher carbohydrate dinner, maybe more sodium for dinner. Maybe I didn't go to the bathroom the same, whatever it is. Like, there are so many things that can make a massive swing in your weight. And obviously I'm educated enough to know that 2.5 pound increase is an actual body fat, but somebody else that is not aware would be like, oh my God, what the heck? How am I can't believe I'm gaining weight. And then you get into that cycle of, screw it, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So I think a big thing is to go by how your clothes fit. I mean, that's a really good indicator. Even doing things like body fat testing, I mean, there's definitely a margin of error there too. That's not perfect. So you really have to go by how you feel you're looking. Progress pictures, I do think, make a big difference, although you may not want to see them. That usually can help to really showcase progress that you've made, especially because it usually fat loss goes at like a glacial pace. So you may not notice the day-to-day changes, but after 3 months, you could notice a big difference from picture A to picture B. So that's why scale weight definitely doesn't tell the whole picture. What tells the whole picture is the whole picture.
Yeah, sure.
Did you have something you wanted to say on that?
No, I think just what are some strategies that we could utilize to either better track our calories or have a better, be more honest with ourselves in terms of counting our calories or anything along those lines? Anything that you think would be beneficial?
Well, I think the main takeaway for most people is that you don't have to completely overhaul your diet in order to see progress, right? If you're someone on the weekends that has 4 slices of pizza, make a simple change, have 2 slices. Like, right there, you're cutting out calories just by doing the most basic thing. Obviously, you want to avoid highly processed foods because they're really easy to overeat and typically more calorie dense. Stick to lean meats, vegetables, and the things that we talk about all the time as the staples of your diet, because those are easier to control, they're more satiating, and usually you can have a lot more volume without that many calories. You'll usually feel better eating a lot of that stuff anyway compared to processed foods and things that are high in salt, sugar, starch, and fat. I think another thing that you might notice too with working out, that was kind of my fifth and my last point here, is that it kind of goes hand in hand, right? Someone's working out more and they're trying to be more mindful of their diet, right? So they're increasing the number of times that they exercise per week, right? So a lot of times what happens when you work out more, you can increase your hunger because you're burning more calories, and it's kind of your body's way to be like, okay, I'm doing more and I'm hungrier. Or people award themselves those extra calories that they burned off, which are typically overestimated in things like activity trackers. What will also happen is when you have that structured exercise, you have a tendency to drop your NEAT, right? We talked about that last week, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So you may get a good workout in for an hour, but you're literally sitting the rest of the day at your desk, and you go home and you say, oh, I worked out today. And you sit on the couch and you watch Netflix for 4 hours. So your NEAT levels can definitely drop. That can make a big difference when it comes to fat loss, stalling like that progress. So typically when I give someone a calorie target or whatever, or positive behavior changes, I'll try and make them have like a step goal, even though activity trackers aren't perfect. But I think that just helps people be more mindful of just kind of moving more, which can make a big difference for those fat loss goals.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think that's definitely something to take into consideration for people who are starting their nutrition program. And if they do gain weight in that first week or so, either a little bit more honesty or a little bit better tracking, or something along those lines, or focusing on the behavior change going in the positive direction is stuff to take into consideration.
Yeah, and look, dieting can suck, and we try and make it suck as little as possible, but there is a level of restriction that comes when you are dieting, if that's what your goal is. And there's a really good quote by Martin McDonald. And it says your perception of the restriction determines its impact, which is so true because you can be hyper focused on something that you're restricting in your diet and then you want it even more. Or you have the person who's like, I can cut those things out, like it's not a big deal. And they're usually more successful because it's not a big deal. So a lot of it's mindset, a lot of it's psychological and being honest with yourself. But that's why we try and make small, sustainable changes, which you don't necessarily feel and can actually make a bigger impact than like completely overhauling your diet, because that's only sustainable for so long.
Sure. And that's all we have today. So I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving, for those of you who are seeing this on Monday. And make sure you eat a decent amount, at least enough to fill up a whole plate of protein.
Yeah.
That was one of the strategies from last week.
That was.
And then if you guys have more questions, again, reach out to us. Let us know what your questions are if you want those to be answered on here by Lauren. And reach out to Lauren if you want to set up a 30-minute consultation to go over your goal specifically and what you're currently going through nutritionally. All right, guys. Have a good one.